All right. Hey, how's it going? And welcome to the third part of the series. So in this part, we're going to talk about a very special move that specifically happens when a pawn wants to kill another pawn in a specific scenario. Okay, this move is called the en passant, which is French for in passing, and you'll see why this is called an en passant. Okay, so let's just make a scenario. Let's say, okay, anyway, this is really not important for the point of this video, so I'll just make a few moves. Boom, and I go here, and here. Okay, now we're at the critical situation. My pawn is right here, and as we mentioned in the previous video, pawns always sort of have this, the squares that pawns control are the square, are these two squares. One square to the upper right diagonal, and one square to the upper left diagonal. Okay, each pawn, okay, same for these pawns, okay? This guy controls these squares, this guy controls this and this, this guy controls this square, this guy also controls this. You get the point, yeah? Right, this one's fighting with my pawn, and okay? Pawns control the squares to the upper left and upper right of them, and the reason why I say that they control those squares is because if, for example, for this white pawn, if any black piece were to find itself in this square when it's white's turn, white could use his pawn over here and kill the piece found here. Okay? So, just keep that in mind. So right now we're in this situation and it's black's turn. Black wants to move this pawn forward for whatever reason, but he doesn't want to move it forward just one. And the reason for that is that if he moves it forward one, well, now my pawn has the ability to kill his pawn. Okay? And he doesn't want that. So black decides to use his special first move ability, right? We said that when a pawn is in its starting position, it can move two squares forward. So in this case, he says, aha, you see, I jumped over the square that you were controlling, right? Because my pawn is controlling this square, and this guy was able to just jump right over it and sort of escape the attack that this pawn would have presented him. Okay, however, that's not the case. And in fact, it's actually a rule of chess that in this exact scenario, okay, if your opponent just tries to jump over this square that your pawn is controlling, your pawn, you can still move your pawn to this square and take his pawn. Just watch closely. He moves forward too, and there, his pawn's gone. Okay? This is called an en passant, or in passing, because as your opponent's pawn tries to bypass your pawn, you have the option to say, not so fast, where do you think you're going? And to stop him. Okay? So in fact, for black in this situation, if he just doesn't want my pawn to take anything on this square, well, he's out of luck, because it makes no difference if he wants to move his pawn one square forward or two squares forward. My pawn can always come to this square and take his pawn. He can take the pawn, if he moves his pawn here, my pawn can just take it regularly. And if he decides to try to jump a square, my pawn can use the special rule of en passant. All right. So that was en passant. It is a special way that only a pawn can kill another pawn. All right, I hope you found the video interesting, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.